Good morning, afternoon, and evening, everyone. Welcome to the June's Esgian Rig webinar. Today's presentation will last approximately 30 minutes and will include some time for questions and answers at the end. To ask a question, please use the Q&A box on the right side panel of today's event window. Today's presenter is Matthew Donovan, our senior rig analyst based in Houston, who will be covering the North Sea, Mediterranean, and West African regions with analysis on recent trends and upcoming activity. Today's slides will be distributed later this week, and this session is being recorded and will be loaded onto the Esgian website again later this week. I'd like to now pass over the presentation to Matthew.
Well, good morning and good afternoon to everybody. My name is Matthew Donovan. I am a senior rig analyst for Esgian, and today we will be presenting a regional outlook for offshore rigs in the North Sea, Mediterranean, and West Africa. Thank you all for joining me today. Of course, we start with the mandatory disclaimer. And our contents for the presentation today, beginning with a bit of a global overview of the offshore rig market, as of course these are global markets that do interact with each other. Utilization worldwide remains very high, with little availability worldwide through 2023 and 2024. And essentially what this means for drilling contractors is they're now able to make more strategic choices about the jobs they take to take advantage of rising day rates. We have seen drillship reactivation pick up over the past year, although contractors are still reactivating those rigs strategically. So rather than reactivating cold stacked units on speculative orders, it's when they have a direct contract fixed to them. And we're also seeing the remaining new build rigs quickly securing work from units that were previously stranded, mainly in the Asia-Pacific region. Semi-submersible utilization is still falling behind drillship utilization, but the sixth-generation semi-submersibles are bidding aggressively on new contracts worldwide, and we are seeing that trend upwards as the drill ships become close to fully utilized. You are seeing more work going to the high-spec semi-submersibles. And jackup utilization is particularly elevated by strong demand in the Middle East. What we've seen is that the excess capacity in other regions was significantly reduced over 2022 and into 2023, as national oil companies in the Middle East picked up jackups for multi-year contracts. So whereas jackup activity in other regions may not have increased dramatically, generally those markets are quite a bit tighter, as much of the excess capacity has moved to the Middle East with long-term jobs there. Looking at this chart for average day rates, we are expecting day rates to rise over the next 2 years. We've seen day rates rise significantly since 2022. Leading edge day rates for drill ships are now in the high 400,000s, and many drilling contractors are expecting a rig to break 500,000 in clean day rates by late 2023 or early 2024. Most likely again for work beginning in 2024. And we're also seeing increased day rates for the jackup markets. In that area, we've got leading edge day rates from 140 into the 160,000s. Turning now specifically to our spotlight on the North Sea, which has been a bit of a different market than some other regions. The North Sea market, in contrast with the rest of the world, has been rather soft in 2023. Although we have had a total backlog of 17.35 years added in 2023 to date. This includes mainly 12.2 years of semi-submersible backlog and 5.15 years of jackup backlog. And the new contracts that were fixed this year were generally in Norway and the United Kingdom. Currently in the region, we have 37 jackups and 35 semi-submersibles, 24 and 23 working at this time. There are still some cold stacked units remaining in the North Sea, 3 semis and 1 jackup. I'm going to turn to the 2 major markets in the North Sea, Norway and the UK individually. And what we have been seeing recently in Norway is that rigs have been leaving due to the weak demand in the area. It's a busy global market, and that's holding opportunities for some of the high-spec, harsh environment semi-submersibles that generally trade on the Norwegian continental shelf. The demand in the region has been soft, and there are no significant further opportunities in the area expected until mid-2024 at the earliest. And that high demand for floating rigs elsewhere has resulted in semi-submersibles leaving the region. We've seen supply gone from 21 units in early 2022 down to 18. We have another 5 units that are already scheduled to leave Norway or have just left. The Hercules will be leaving for Canada in mid-2023, and following that work in Canada, it will be going to Namibia for work with Galp Energia, which we will discuss in a little more detail in a bit. The Deep Sea Atlantic will be moving from Norway to the UK North Sea in early 2024. Island Innovator recently started work in the UK and will be leaving for Equatorial Guinea after this. And then more importantly, the Transocean Endurance and Transocean Equinox, previously on quite long-term contracts in Norway, have now secured work outside the region. Transocean Endurance and Transocean Equinox will be both moving to Australia in early 2024. The Endurance for over a year of work, and Transocean Equinox has a 5-well contract offshore Australia. So that's a significant amount of capacity leaving the region in the near future. Once these scheduled moves take place, there'll be 11 active semi-submersibles remaining on the Norwegian continental shelf, plus 2 warm-stacked units. Now, there are the possibility of some units coming into the region again. There are 2 new-build harsh environment semi-submersibles that may move to Norway after delivery. But some of these units that are leaving the region may be gone for quite some time, perhaps may not return anytime in the near future. Given that the Norwegian market both needs harsh environment units and units that have a Norwegian safety case. So it's not like other areas, and it's not quite as easy for rigs to move in and trade in Norway. So is the potential for that market to be undersupplied in the future if these rigs do not move back. Looking at the potential demand in Norway, as we said, not much before mid-2024, and a lot of the operators in the region have already secured rigs for their long-term projects. Largest operator in the area is Equinor. They've got 10 rigs currently under contract, and they recently issued a request for information for an additional 2 semi-submersibles. That's for work to late 2024 or 2025. Aker BP has secured rigs via alliance agreements with Noble and Odfjell Drilling for 2 jackups and 2 semi-submersibles respectively. And they also have the Saipem semi-submersible Scarabeo 8 under long-term charter. So that company has filed a number of plans for development and exploration drilling recently, but those needs will be met by the rigs that they currently have under charter. Vår Energy has extended its contract for the Seadrill semi-submersible West Phoenix into August 2024, and they've also issued an RFI for 2 semi-submersibles for long-term work in the North Sea and Barents Sea. Again, that's more for work beginning in 2024, possibly 2025. We have the deadline for the next licensing round offshore Norway. That's an awards in predefined areas for 2023. The deadline for that is August 2023, with awards expected in the first quarter of 2024. So once those are awarded, we'll see how much that can potentially do in terms of future demand. We have the tenders and current known tenders and pre-tenders for work offshore Norway. So you can see 2024 view, and then sporadic in 2025 and 2026 currently. So that's just tenders and pre-tenders for the market. But as most with these units moving out of the region, there's the possibility, if demand does tick upwards at any point, that could lead to increased day rates in the region due to the lower overall supply. Now, turning to the United Kingdom, demand has been slow in the United Kingdom, and many companies there have blamed the Energy Profits Levy, EPL. The outlook for the UK softened following the introduction of the EPL in 2022. Right now, it's an additional 35% tax on UK oil and gas profits, on top of the existing 40% headline rate of tax. And operators, including APA Corp and Harbour Energy, have cited the EPL as a reason for reassessing spending in the region or cutting back on drilling. And indeed, in the case of APA, we did see a semi-submersible released from its contract early in reaction to that, to the decreased drilling from the EPL. Now, recently, the UK government has announced a measure to return the tax rate to 40% if commodity prices fall to historically normal levels for a sustained period. But as of now, still in effect. Most of the upcoming opportunities offshore in the UK are for development drilling or plugging and abandonment projects, as is common in a mature area. We're still waiting on FIDs for some undeveloped fields, Rosebank and Cambo in the area. Equinor is expected to make a decision on Rosebank this year, and a decision on the Ithaca Energy-operated Cambo has been pushed back, and Shell will be selling its stake in the Cambo field. UK recently held its 33rd offshore oil and gas licensing round that attracted 115 bids. We're expecting licenses start to be awarded by late Q2 2023. Moving on now from the North Sea to West Africa. We're expecting some rising demand for floating rigs in West Africa. West Africa is part of the Golden Triangle for floating rigs, with the US, Gulf of Mexico, and Brazil forming the other points of that triangle. And so these are the three major markets for ultra deep water drill ships. And when you have got a tight global market, as we do at the moment, that means rigs will be moving in and out of West Africa over the next several years, most likely. Although we do have some longer term contracts that will be keeping units there. And any uptick in demand is also going to have to deal with the fact that there's similar rising demand in the US Gulf of Mexico and Brazil, so competing essentially for the same pool of rigs. In West Africa, we've had 6.5 years of floating rig backlog added in 2023 to date. And something that's drawing particular interest in the region is Namibia's Orange Basin, which we'll cover on the next slide. Elsewhere in the region, in Angola, a major contract with Azul Energy, a joint venture between Eni and BP, is expected in the near future, and other operators are also looking to secure rigs for Angola projects, including Cabinda Gulf Offshore, which issued a recent pre-tender. We're expecting several operators to drill wells offshore Ghana in line with lease requirements, though the timing of some of these wells remains uncertain. The way this could be fulfilled is via rig share agreement or sublet for some of this work, as these are likely short drilling programs and can be difficult in a tight market as we have at the moment to secure rigs for short-term work. Longer term work is available and day rates are rising. We've seen recent fixtures and upcoming requirements for activity in Nigeria, Cote d'Ivoire, Gabon, Equatorial Guinea, and Mauritania, and that's expected to bring new rigs to West Africa over the next year or so. In East Africa, there's currently very little activity following the drilling of the Raya 1 well offshore Mozambique. Further rig activity offshore Mozambique may depend on the resolution of security and human rights issues in the area and the results of the Raya 1 well. Now, spotlight on Namibia. The offshore industry has been watching the Shell and TotalEnergies campaign in the area quite closely, with several successful wells drilled there in 2022. There's been some anticipation that the Orange Basin in Namibia, and indeed extending into South Africa, could become an area like Guyana, which is supporting a large amount of drilling year-round, long-term work for floating rigs. Now, Shell most recently began drilling with the Deep Sea Bolster on its license PL39 in late 2022 on a 12-month contract, and they reported a third discovery in the region, Jonker 1, in March 2023, following on from their previous two discoveries in 2022. And in late May, Shell extended that rig's contract by 6 months with an option for an additional 6 months also available. And it has applied to the Namibian authorities for permission to drill additional exploration and appraisal wells on the license. The other major program currently in the region is Total Energies. They contracted 2 rigs to drill offshore Namibia in 2023. It's a $300 million program following up from their Venus 1 discovery. Tungsten Explorer began work in Q1 2023 and is contracted into early 2024 with further options available. And that'll be used for the Venus 1A appraisal and the Nara 1 appraisal and associated drill stem tests. Deep Sea Mirror recently arrived in Namibia and is expected to begin its 300-day contract around late Q2. And during its time in Namibia, this rig will carry out drill stem tests at Venus 1A and Venus 1 on Block 2913B. As I mentioned earlier, Galp Energia has contracted the Hercules for a 2-well contract on PEL 83 offshore Namibia. That's currently expected to begin in late 2023, although the exact start date may depend on when the rig arrives from Canada. And there are other operators with acreage offshore Namibia, including Chevron, Pan Continental Oil and Gas, ExxonMobil, BW, and the state oil company Namcor. And recently, Woodside completed a 3D seismic survey on PEL 87. It has an option with the Pan Continental and its current partners to acquire an interest in that license. If exercised, Woodside will carry the partners for the drilling of an exploration well on that. And Chevron has also mentioned plans for exploration drilling on PEL 90 offshore Namibia in late 2024, early 2025. Turning to jackups in West Africa, this has not been a very much improvement, steady demand, but we may see an uptick in that. Movement of a large number of jackups in the Middle East, as I mentioned earlier, made West Africa and other regional markets much tighter. And with that competitive global market for jackups and the rising day rates, that's resulted in some operators finding it difficult to secure jackups for upcoming work in West Africa. So we've had a number of tenders in the region that have been out for quite some time without a rig being fixed. But we have had 6.2 years of jackup backlog added in 2023 to date, and that's primarily been for activity in Nigeria, along with some options exercised for jackups in Gabon, Cameroon, and the Congo. So with some current tenders and planned activity, we're likely to see new contracts fixed in Nigeria, Angola, Congo, Cameroon, and Gabon over the next year or so. That will keep the rigs already in the area working and leading to some incremental increases in demand. Moving now to the Mediterranean. Smaller region, but still important. Floating rigs, we're likely to see more of these move to the region over the next year or so. Floating rig activity in the Mediterranean may pick up as operators follow up on previous discoveries in the Eastern Mediterranean. Chevron is currently expected to contract a floating rig for an upcoming drilling program across the Eastern Med. Eni plans to spud the Orion 1X well offshore Egypt in late 2023 and maybe bringing a rig to the region where it will join the Saipem 10,000, which currently has other work lined up in Egypt and Italy. Esgian is planning to take the final investment decision on its Kaplan area, previously known as Olympus development, offshore Israel in late 2023, following up on those Olympus area finds in 2022. And there are tenders and pre-tenders and other plans in the works for new drilling programs offshore Egypt, Israel, Bulgaria, Romania, Morocco, and Spain. The Turkish state oil company TPAO has 4 owner-operated drill ships that it continues to work in the region. And over this point, we've really only had about a year of floating rig backlog added in 2023 to date. One of the more anticipated awards in the region recently was the Transocean Semi-Submersible Transocean Barents, which has a contract to drill an exploration well for TotalEnergies on Block 9 offshore Lebanon. That drilling is expected to begin in 2023, and that follows an agreement between Israel and Lebanon over maritime boundaries. We also had this year the Stena 4 secure a 3-well contract with Shell offshore Egypt, which will begin after its current work in the region with Chevron. Look, we do have 7 drill ships remaining cold stacked in the region. This is the use of Greece as a stacking area. And as I mentioned earlier, rigs are being reactivated strategically rather than on spec. So any reactivations in the area may not necessarily be for work in the Mediterranean. Backup market in the Mediterranean, quite small compared to the nearby Middle East. At around 0.4 years of backlog added in 2023 to date due to contracts offshore Egypt and Morocco, which have been awarded to the Vantage Drilling jackup Topaz Driller. Following some contracts awarded in late 2022, the Shelf Drilling Resourceful is expected to begin a 3-year contract offshore Italy in 2023, joining the Key Manhattan, which also secured a new 2-year contract with ENI beginning this year. There's additional demand in the region over the next year and a half could come from activity offshore Egypt, Croatia, and Italy. And of course, in the nearby Black Sea region, activity in some areas of the Black Sea has been restricted by the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. Now for the key takeaways for our presentation today. As I mentioned earlier, rig demand in the North Sea has been weak in 2023. As a result, semi-submersibles have begun leaving Norway, in some cases for long-term contracts in other regions. Many of these rigs may not return to the North Sea for some time. So any potential uptick in demand, that's going to be watched carefully, as there could be less supply to fulfill any uptick in demand in the region. We are expecting some increase in floating rig demand in West Africa and the Mediterranean. But it is to remember that global supply is limited right now. A lot of rigs are on long-term contracts already, and these rigs will have to be projects will have to compete with demand in the Americas, US Gulf of Mexico, and in South America, Brazil particularly. Namibia, potential hotspot for floating rigs long-term, although future activity will depend on the results of those current drilling programs. And globally, day rates continue to trend upwards as the market remains tight, particularly for high-spec drill ships and jackups. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. That's our presentation today. I believe we do have time for a Q&A.
Thank you, Matthew. It was a lot of great information and insight there from the Esgian team. So really appreciate that. We do have a couple of questions you said that have come through. We've got a few minutes left in this spell. So a couple of questions on the floating rig market. With it remaining so tight, has there been any movement to order new ultra deep water rigs recently?
So far, no. None of those rigs are being. None of those rigs are being have been ordered yet. But what we are seeing is the new builds from the previous rig order cycle. It means mostly rigs that were ordered 2011 through 2013, and had basically been stranded during the previous downturn. Those are now being picked up for work elsewhere. But what we're not seeing yet is new rigs being ordered. It's quite early in the cycle. For that, early in the up cycle for that. Right now, demand's being met, and I mean, I think it would be unlikely to see new rig orders while you still have cold stacked units and a few of the ones already under construction that need to find work. I think also what you would see is that ordering a new rig at the moment isn't really a solution to near-term demand. Given the amount of time it would take from order to rig delivery, that's not really going to solve current issues with tight demand. So while it's not impossible that we'll see new rig orders in the future, we have not seen any yet.
Okay. Another couple of questions have been around contract lengths. Sorry, are we seeing an increase in contract lengths for rigs at this moment in time?
Yes, we are. I mean, especially with demand being tight, you've got what we've seen is an uptick in overall contract length. When it's in a downturn, you see rigs fixed for one well, 2 wells at a time. We're now seeing a return to multi-year contracts, not quite to the level it was before. Sort of pre-2014, you had rigs signed to sort of 5-10 year contracts, but we're seeing that tick up into multi-year terms now. Quite a few of those have been fixed recently because now operators are seeing extended periods of work, and they're wanting to secure rigs before day rates increase further.
Okay. Interesting you mentioned day rates. There's obviously a few questions around that particular topic. So hopefully you've got a crystal ball with you there. How high do Esgian think the day rates will go for the West African region?
So I mean, that's one moment. Sorry, one sec. Yeah. So I mean, globally, day rates are, as I said, globally day rates are in the leading edge rates are in the high 400,000s. But we are still seeing rigs fixed in the 300,000 range. Of that. So typically rigs at the upper rigs that get the high, for the floating rigs, the higher end of the range is in US Gulf of Mexico, but we have seen especially some short-term contracts in West Africa fixed in that 400. So that it's still open to when we'll see a day rate in the 500K range, but I think once that does start to happen in possibly in 2024, we could see rates in West Africa moving up towards that.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thanks, Sam. We've really come now to the end of the allotted time. I know we have a couple of questions that are still outstanding, so we shall reach out to those individuals directly after this call with an email, hopefully answering the questions then. So it just leaves me to again confirm that the presentation slides will be distributed later this week, and they will be sending a link also to the recording of the presentation. Again, that will be done by the end of this week. So I'd really just like to thank everyone for attending. Hopefully we covered the information you were looking for at this moment in time, and that concludes today's presentation. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.